Another large police department promises immediate reform as weeks of protests reshape Colorado. We asked Denver's police chief why it took a federal judge to tell them to follow their own rules, and whether the only officer getting fired is that guy with the dumb Instagram post. We're firing up the truth test machine for the political ad season with no shortage of to shovel into it, as we prepare for the first TV debate of the Democratic Senate primary tonight on 9 News. Yesterday's one-day spike in coronavirus hospitalizations never really happened. We'll explain. The mystery raccoon at a pet store, the one that sparked the public health investigation, that I cannot explain, but we'll discuss next. Marching feet in Denver were clearly heard in Aurora as that city announced police reform today, including an ongoing investigation into the controversial death that involved police last year. Elijah McClain was his name, 34 years old when he died last August after a struggle with Aurora officers. His family says he was running an errand for his brother and often would wear a mask when it was cold out. Police say that he resisted, and emergency medical services on site gave McClain ketamine. Aurora police are making changes to how their police force operates and giving credit to the protests in the streets. Aurora is banning carotid holds. That type of restraint, that hold, was used on Elijah McClain. APD officers will also have to shout out a warning identifying them as police before they shoot someone. APD says that was an unwritten rule, now written. And officers in Aurora will have to step in if they see another officer using excessive force. That's about to be mandated statewide. But interim police chief Vanessa Wilson says that intervention needs to be more than just talk.
So the duty to intervene is going to be more than just a verbal, hey, you should stop. If need be, God forbid we face anything like that, with the intentional act that we saw in Minneapolis, that the officers will take action to remove that person from the scene in that situation and then directly report that to their supervisor.
The state legislature also appears ready to remove the special legal protection that Colorado's law enforcement officers receive. You heard a sheriff say right here that without what's called qualified immunity, his officers would not risk intervening in tough situations. Well, the state Senate passed a bill today to kill qualified immunity, that protection from legal liability, personal liability for officers. And it looks like the House will do the same. Here's Steve Steger.
They didn't want government officials, including police officers, to hesitate in making split-second decisions.
That is the purpose behind qualified immunity. It's not necessarily a law, but a standard upheld in courts. Basically, if you go to the courts to sue a police officer for violating your rights, say by using excessive force, you have to prove two things.
Not only that the officer did use excessive force in a way that violated your rights and was illegal, even if you prove that the conduct was in fact illegal, you still lose unless you can point to an earlier case with basically exactly the same facts.
That's Ian Farrell, by the way, a constitutional law professor at DU.
The court has said, okay, fine, that's excessive force, but we don't see any earlier cases where the police did exactly the same thing, therefore you lose.
And Farrell says oftentimes in cases like this, a court doesn't even rule on conduct, which can make it awfully hard to create precedent.
There may never be this clearly established rule because the court never gets to that particular question.
The accountability bill making its way through the state legislature right now removes that requirement. You don't have to point to the result of another identical court case. It would only apply in state court, but Farrell says the U.S. Supreme Court could hear arguments in any of 8 qualified immunity cases in front of them right now.
But this seems like it is a pressing issue that the court may well take up.
Now, the police accountability bill in its current form does have a little bit of leniency for officers. Farrell says something called a reasonability defense. Basically, if they had a reasonable belief that their conduct was legal, well, then their department would be liable for the legal bills. But if they do not have that reasonability standard, they could be liable personally for up to 5% of the judgment, up to $25,000, whichever one of those numbers is less. Kyle.
See, I think there are a number of professions out there where folks have some personal liability if they do wrong on the job. And a lot of those other professions, people carry insurance for that.
So insurance is actually written into this bill. It said if the peace officer cannot pay for this, that their insurance would be held liable for it. I did some calling around today to experts on insurance, and they tell me there's really no policy that exists right now. Obviously, this is a new law, so if it does eventually pass, maybe they will make a policy. But they said there's no policy that exists right now. And the folks who crafted the bill, a representative from the ACLU told me the thought may be that that could be a union responsibility. Maybe the union would provide some sort of insurance to officers that they could use for this personal liability. It's a lot of it is still up in the air, but that's a big question.
All right. Steve Sager, thank you very much. And want to correct something here. A moment ago, I said that Elijah McClain in Aurora was 24 years old. He was 23 years old at the time of his death in August of last year. Republicans in the state legislature won some changes to that police accountability bill that passed the Senate today, and they dropped some objections elsewhere. And so that bill, described just last week as revenge against cops, passed 32-1 today. The one was Republican State Senator Jerry Sonnenberg of Sterling. He called people in the streets thugs and looters. Doubled down on that phrase today. Sonnenberg said he voted no because he doesn't see the need for police reform in his district in rural northeastern Colorado.
As it sits right now, as we have the current environment we're in right now, our rural areas are not an issue, and the unfunded mandate on these rural issues become a problem for them being able to do their job.
There are two other senators who were excused from today's vote. This police reform bill now heads to the House, where it'll have a public hearing tomorrow. Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin has shifted his evaluation of his officers' actions in response to the street protests. It used to be complete support that they did everything right. Now he's calling for a comprehensive review. The chief publicly backed some internal affairs investigations into alleged brutality caught on video. But the only Denver police officer who's been canned for this is the guy who posted that Instagram photo in riot gear with the caption about "Let's start a riot."
We're opening formal investigations on the incidences that we have seen, the videos that have been brought forward, and we will do comprehensive investigations with the Office of Independent Monitors oversight and review, making sure that the actions were within policy, and if they're not within policy, then those individual officers will be held accountable for their actions.
Federal judge blasted DPD in a ruling late last week, saying that they had been unable to police their own in order to protect peaceful protesters. DPD's response to the judge was basically like, oh, yeah, your rules are fine because those are basically our rules that we already have in place. Well, that disconnect was not lost on our Lori Lizarraga, who talked with Chief Pazin today.
I'm asking these questions, and you're saying many of these are already standards that the Denver Police Department follows. But again, it did take a federal court order to get the Denver Police Department to follow your own guidelines. So I think that there is maybe a disconnect between seeing that this is a rule and then believing that it's being followed.
Well, the expectation was that we follow those policies from the get-go. And if we didn't, then we need to hold our individual officers accountable for their actions.
Sure, I just think that if you had been following those guidelines, then probably a federal judge wouldn't have gotten involved.
Again, the policy must be adhered to, and if it's not, then we will hold our individual officers accountable for their actions. There are ongoing investigations. We're asking for a comprehensive review of this entire situation to see if there are areas that we could learn from.
To be continued. Hey, your ballot's coming. Your ballot's coming in the mail this week. It's the first chance for unaffiliated voters to participate in a Senate primary in the state of Colorado. That is the biggest primary race that you will see on your ballot. Primary day is June 30th, but despite what you will hear some presidents of the United States say, Colorado has had fair and secure mail voting from home for years. Elections run by Republicans and Democrats alike. Political ads are coming back to your television. So, as they say, nature is healing. About time politics guy Marshall Zeller fired up the old truth test machine. He starts off with an ad from the Democratic Senate frontrunner, John Hickenlooper.
When I was sworn in as governor, Colorado ranked 40th in the country in job creation. But together we built the #1 economy in America.
It's true, U.S. World News and Report in 2018 ranked Colorado the #1 economy. But saying Colorado has gone from 40th in job creation to the #1 economy is not apples to apples. Job growth was just one criteria used to determine a state's overall economic ranking. And economy was just one area. U.S. World News and Report ranked Colorado 10th overall when it looked at economy, the state's healthcare, education system, and fiscal stability. Plus, there's no one organization that hands out America's #1 economy award. A quick web search found Business Insider had Colorado ranked 5th in 2018 based on 5 factors, and Wallet Hub, which had its rankings end up in Forbes magazine, also had Colorado 5th based on 28 factors. Yes, what Hickenlooper said about 2018's U.S. World News and Report is true, but that ranking is not true across the board.
And that's what Washington needs now. Instead of handing out loans to big corporations, they should be helping small businesses stay in business.
Hickenlooper doesn't give us a definitive fact to check here, but his campaign sent me information showing he's talking about the PPP loans from the CARES Act. These are the loans that large corporations like the LA Lakers, Potbelly Sandwich, and Shake Shack each got millions from and then returned after that became public. Which Colorado businesses received a loan? The federal government has not yet provided us that list, but we know through Saturday almost 100,000 loans have been granted in Colorado, totaling $10 billion.
And that's what Washington needs now.
Hickenlooper doesn't say in his ad if he would have voted against the CARES Act that provided the loan money. In fact, no current senator did. It passed 96-0, with yes votes from both Colorado senators, Cory Gardner and Michael Bennet. You can see that ad without my Bitmoji coming up in a commercial break later, and next you'll also see one from his challenger Andrew Romanoff and the senator they both want to replace, Cory Gardner. This is the first truth test. Kyle, as you said, nature is healing. There'll be more coming.
Okay, you promise you're going to do them all. You're not just going to pick like your favorite ones and not do the ones that you don't. People think that every single year, Marshall. They think that like you only like truth test like one side of the edge. You put them all on 9news.com in the truth test section for people to watch.
And they should set their DVRs or watch live at 6 o'clock on Next.
All right. Thanks, sir. Hey, right after Next tonight, grab a drink or get your popcorn ready, as they say, and come on back at 6:30. Because we will be holding the first televised debate in the Democratic Senate primary. John Hickenlooper versus Andrew Romanoff. Is Romanoff going to challenge Hickenlooper over his ethics violations and contempt of the Ethics Commission? We shall see. A pretty hands-off race to date could change tonight. Our debate at 6:30 on 9 News. We told you yesterday's rise in COVID-19 hospitalizations could be a blip. Turns out it wasn't even that. While the governor warns he's watching some of our neighbors who don't seem to have control of the coronavirus. That's next. Fewer than 200 Coloradans are in the hospital with COVID-19 right now, and we would have loved to share that good news with you yesterday when it happened, except somebody working on the health numbers put the wrong info into the system, and it made it look like there was that one-day increase in hospitalizations. We told you yesterday to watch it, and we check on it, and sure enough today, the Hospital Association told our Chris Vanderveen that yesterday's apparent spike in hospitalizations was just a data entry error. It was supposed to be 198 people, not 229. Today, that number is even lower, 180. COVID-19 hospitalizations in Colorado. There's your correct graph. So Colorado is bordered, at least point to point, by 7 states. So that's a lot of side-eye to be thrown at places that are not doing as good of a job at keeping COVID-19 in check. Democratic Governor Jared Polis said today he's keeping a close eye on 2 of them because of what's going on with COVID-19 there.
We see COVID-19 on the rise in some of our neighboring states, Utah and Arizona. Thanks so far to Coloradans' extraordinary efforts to be 6 feet apart from others, to wear masks when in public. So far, we haven't seen that same trend here.
Governor also said that the state is continuing to finalize a plan to let people who test negative for COVID-19 go in to visit family and nursing homes. I know that is the #1 concern right now for a lot of people, so we'll keep asking questions and keep you updated.
Wow, it has been a crazy few days, but our latest wind event is gone. That storm system is moving into Nebraska and Kansas. Good riddance and good luck to them. High wind warnings will be scaled back. Temperatures today were cooler than the average of 80, but we're trending warmer for the next few days. We will watch as this system moves away with those high wind warnings intact for much of Nebraska and Kansas, but the pressure gradient beginning to ease tonight, and that bodes well for a calmer forecast for the next few days. The threat for severe weather well off to the east of us. Tonight, clear, cool, less wind, our low 45. Tomorrow, sunny and 76. We move into the 80s for Thursday and Friday with a chance of a thunderstorm heading into the weekend, and then back to sunshine and 90s for the early part of next week.
El Paso County has a raccoon problem. Not like an infestation. One raccoon. One really problematic baby raccoon. The health department would like to talk to the public about that furry little sucker next. You asked last night for a return to some of the next classics. So a reminder tonight, that's not how you Colorado. We've covered this lesson before. Wildlife is, say it with me, wild. So we leave it alone. Don't be raising baby raccoons and then dropping it off a Petco when they start acting weird. El Paso County Public Health says someone dropped off a baby raccoon at a Petco in Colorado Springs, the one at 19th. And they have some questions about this. Raccoon, of course, is not talking. As they say on local TDB News, a raccoon, much like this one. Here's the thing. El Paso County Public Health is concerned that the raccoon could have rabies or other diseases. So they want anyone who went to that Petco Sunday morning to give them a call. They would also love to have a conversation with the person who decided to drop off a raccoon, a potentially rabid raccoon, inside of a Petco. It's not how you Colorado. You also asked if we might bring back the old segment, The Most Colorado Thing We Saw Today. Fine, we'll do it. That and your feedback next. All right, back by popular demand, the most Colorado thing we saw today. It's snow in June. Come on, you could have guessed that's what we were going to do. And Terry Walsh, she got after it. Built a little family of snowmen, snowwomen, snowfolk along the Continental Trail. They're junior-sized, even though there's plenty of snow at 10,000 feet. Even before last night's snow came through Milner Pass off Trail Ridge Road up in Rocky Mountain National Park. America's highest continuous paved road is closed once again, right after it opened for the season. Ashley Dawn writes in tonight and says, Kyle, I may be wrong, but I haven't seen you interview any law enforcement agencies regarding the police accountability bill. It's okay, not everybody can watch every night. We had Larimer County Sheriff Justin Smith on for an extended interview. Heard from Weld County's former sheriff, John Cook, on the bill. And if there's another interesting law enforcement voice you'd like to hear from, let me know. Kat says, Kyle, dear, the barber shops are open. Please take advantage. Looking a little heavy on the top. Uh-oh.